Good morning, everyone. Welcome to FCTM Live. I am Mangai Neelavanan, and I am your room moderator, and I am pleased to welcome Queshonda Kudaisi. And for the purpose of this session, I would like to say that we are recording this session, and feel free to use the chat button to post your questions, and we will get back to you on that. And Queshonda Kudaisi, to give a big kudos to her. She is the Access and Equity Chair for FCTM. She is also the webmaster for the Pope Council of Mathematics as well as for the FCTM. She is the founder of Math Education Matters and the executive director of Narrow Path Outreach Incorporated, and also a PhD candidate. So without further ado, please join me in welcome Queshonda Kudaisi.
Thank you so much, Mangai. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. So thank you all for joining. I see you have put a little bit about yourself in the chat. So welcome, Alicia, Mangai, Susanna from Clearwater, Sarasota, Martin County, Palm Beach County. So welcome. And thank you for getting up so early on this Saturday morning. I'm sure you could have been doing something else. So I'm excited that you've joined me this morning. So as Mangai said, I am the Access and Equity Chair for FCTM. So I'm going to be kind of speaking with you about that today. But before I talk about what we're doing with that, I'm going to kind of talk about just access and equity in general. So hopefully you're able to take away something today. So a little bit about myself. I am a wife and mom. I'm a math teacher. I'm an instructional math coach at Polk County School Board. I'm a student at USF, looking to be done with that soon. And you've just kind of told me a little bit about yourself. So thank you for doing that as you enter the room. So in teacher fashion, I am going to give a little open-ended quiz at the end, really just a reflection. So I'll go ahead and put the link to that in the chat now. And so as you are listening or taking notes, you'll kind of know what question I'm going to ask at the end. So just wanted to provide that. All right, so again, what we're going to talk about today is equity in mathematics education, right? So just some basic definitions. I see it says you need permission. I thought I tested it out, but of course, in true technology fashion, it messes up sometimes. So let me go ahead and open that. Let's see. Not sure why it's not working. Let's go to edit. There we go. Okay. I just had a friend test it out for me this morning. Maybe settings. I forgot how to change it. Let's see. Is it working now?
Queshonda, it's not. Do you see in settings anyone on the internet can view?
Let's see. I'll share my screen for that. Let's see. So this is what I'm seeing. Settings here, but I don't see.
Can you click on the three dots on the right side?
Oh, here it is. I think this is it.
Yes.
There we go. So try it now and see. Let me refresh it.
It works.
Yay. See, collaboration is awesome.
Woohoo! We got this.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so now I'm gonna click new share to go back to the other screen. All right, thank you for letting us know, Susanna. All right, so back over here. All right, so we're gonna talk about math education. We're gonna talk about the achievement versus the opportunity gap, some strategies to promote equity in the classroom, a little bit about the digital divide and digital equity, and then some of the work that FCTM is doing on access and equity. Okay. So first, let's define equity. I feel like sometimes it could be so broad that it's hard for us to really get a grip on what it means. There's several different definitions out there of what equity means, but I really like the definition given by Rochelle Gutierrez. She defines equity in 4 different dimensions, and that's access, achievement, identity, and power. So the access dimension relates to the tangible resources that students have available to them to participate in mathematics. And some of those resources may include adequate technology and supplies in the classroom, a rigorous curriculum, a classroom environment that invites participation, reasonable class sizes, and supports for learning outside of the classroom. Then we have equity as identity. And so the identity dimension concerns itself with the balance between self and others. A window and mirror metaphor is useful here. And that is, students have the opportunity to look in the mirror and that they see themselves reflected in the curriculum, but then they also have the opportunity to look outside of windows where they get to see others represented in the curriculum. And so I have an example task here that was designed by one of our Ignite speakers today, Desai, 2020. And this task really promotes attention to diversity and inclusion, and also the development of students' mathematical identities. So in this task, this mathematics heritage project, there's several options for students to choose, but they're essentially choosing an aspect of their cultural identity or heritage that they want to explore further, and then they make connections to mathematics to be able to see themselves represented in the curriculum. Then we have equity as power, right? So the power dimension takes up issues of social transformation at many levels, which is really what my research is in. And so equity as power may look like voice in the classroom, opportunities for students to use math as an analytical tool to critique society. Alternative notions of knowledge are valued and appreciated in the classroom. And then rethinking the field of mathematics as a more humanistic enterprise, right? So recognizing that math needs people, not just people need math. But one of the things I want to focus on in this power dimension is that students getting to use mathematics as a tool to transform society, right? So I have an example here, an example lesson where students do exactly just that. So the title of the lesson is Bringing Healthy Food Choices to the Desert. And in this lesson came from Barry and his colleagues' book on teaching mathematics for social justice. And in this example, students use geometry to explore a solution for eradicating a food desert in their community. And just for information purposes, a food desert is a geographic area in which a substantial share of the population is low income and lacks access to healthy food grocery stores within 1 to 10 miles, depending on the location. And so in this lesson, the students use geometric concepts of centroid, circumcenter, incenter, or orthocenter of a triangle to determine the most equitable access of a new store location for residents of their community. So they're given these 3 triangles, all representing different locations in their actual community. And then at the end of the lesson, students actually write a proposal and provide a rationale for the particular location that they chose. And then some students may even be encouraged to send those proposals to like the mayor or other people in power in their communities. And so that just provides a way for students to make connection to the mathematics that they're doing, both in their world and in context, because oftentimes we see that the math is very decontextualized. And so it's hard for students to make connections or even remember the math that we are teaching them. And so I love, love, love this idea of using math as a way to transform their environments. So any comments or questions about that before we move on to talking about equity in the achievement gap?
I just think that's a great task looking at that. Wow, I love it. You said it was Dr. Barry's book. What do you remember what it's called?
Yes, it's called High School Math Lessons to Explore Injustice, I believe. I have the paper version, I have the digital version, but I'll put the link to that in the chat. Teaching math for social justice, Barry et al. Let's see if it'll come up. Yep, it's right here. So I absolutely love this book. I was looking at it last night. So here we go, right there in the chat. Yes, I agree. It is a really good cross-curricular activity as well. So, all right, good, good, good. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about equity in the achievement gap. So the achievement gap has been defined as the gap in mathematics achievement between rich and poor students and between primarily brown and black students and then white students. And this conversation is often driven by test scores, right? So this is an example of the Florida Standards Assessment State Summary from before the pandemic, back in 2019 in the spring. And these are just some of the scores. So I want you to just take a second and look at the scores and tell me some things that you notice or wonder about this data. And feel free to unmute yourself or put that in the chat. I'll give you a couple minutes to look at that. Yeah, that was one of the major things I noticed as well. Alicia said the percentage in level 3 or above seems to drop as the grades increase, right? I said, maybe I need to teach at the middle school level. I've majority of the time taught at the high school level, but right, we know there's some other factors there, but yeah. Middle school seems to do really well, really well. Yeah, a big drop from 5th to 6th. Thank you, Susanna. So in general, we see that it is decreasing, right, as we get into the higher grades. Now, that's great data to have and great information to have, but sometimes the issue comes when this type of data is parsed apart by race or socioeconomic status, and then conclusions are made about what students can and can't do based on this data alone, right? So obviously this is valuable information to have, but it can sometimes cause issues with stereotyping and negative attitudes about students that teachers may hold. And so, sorry. There we go. So many mathematics education scholars and researchers have expressed issues with the achievement gap for several reasons, but I'm just going to discuss two of those reasons. So first, the first issue with the achievement gap is that it fails to consider the context of the school that the data is being gathered from. For instance, if we look at this picture, right, we see this student, he has his head down, and we may assume many things about that student. Maybe he's sleepy or doesn't want to work or he's angry. But how many times do we actually consider our actions as teacher, right? Like as a teacher, are we given challenging work? Is it on grade level? Is it engaging? Is this the fourth time that the student is receiving the same assignment, right? And just like the observation that you all made, why is it that it's dropping as the grades are getting higher? And we know that in elementary, the curriculum can be very engaging, right? Like teachers are looking for so many different ways to make learning fun. And then sometimes as we increase to those higher grades, we're all about drilling for the test. Somebody said, could that be because middle schools is when the population is split into different classes. Lower level classes do not expose students to the same material. That's a good point, and we're going to get to that about students' opportunity to learn, right? Like encouraging that shift from looking at the achievement gap to other contextual factors that we may ignore. So that's a huge point, and that's what I had to learn, because I remember my first couple of years teaching algebra and seeing this data, and I'm like, I'm doing terrible. Like, how are the 8th graders, doing so well? But oftentimes they take the highest achieving students and put them all in one class, and not just about them being highest achieving, but also what they're being exposed to, like you said, right? And so Susanna said, very true, and that's where acceleration is done in elementary. Very true. And that's where acceleration done in elementary really starts showing up. Right. So we see students, or y'all just leading me right into my next point eventually about students' opportunity to learn. Good. So that's the first issue with it. And then the second issue is that it what you just said, it ignores, well, this is a little different. It ignores the context of schools where students of color or diverse students are succeeding, right? So we focus so much on where students are failing, but we're not also looking at where students are succeeding. Then we miss opportunities to steal some of those strategies. As educators, we love to steal ideas from each other, right? And if we're not looking in those areas where students are succeeding, then it's hard for us to be able to implement those with our students. And so I did find some information about some of the things that are being done. And it really is just best practices in general, right? Get to know your students in meaningful ways, scaffold instruction, and provide grade level instruction. Like, I wonder how much would change if we just provided grade level. I'm not even talking about like level 5, level 4 questions, right? Like, what if we provided level 3 questions across the board, right? Because oftentimes we see very basic questions being asked, and it may be from 2-3 years ago that they've learned it, right? And so understanding vertical alignment is so crucial. It's so crucial. And then believing that all students can learn, creating an engaging classroom community, and drawing upon the deep and profound understanding of mathematics when choosing tasks, right? That goes back to choosing tasks that matter to students, choosing tasks that provide windows and mirrors in the curriculum, choosing tasks that empower students to make a social change in their community. And so refocusing our lens to attend to the opportunity gap, which many of you have already brought up. So awesome, awesome, awesome. So equity as the opportunity to learn has been discussed in many ways. And the top three are testing, resources, and instruction. And so when we talk about testing, opportunity to learn is as a reflection of the student's opportunity to learn content on which they may be assessed. Resources to support teaching and learning, including teacher qualifications, technology, supportive services, expenditures, and the like. And then when it relates to instruction, classroom processes and practices enabling learning for individual groups of students. So my question then is, which of these have you seen at play within your own educational context, whether that be for good or for bad, or what are your thoughts on these three different components as opportunity to learn for students?
Well, I can talk to that. I see positives in my district, and I see some things that we need to, get a lot better at. And so as far as like, they all go hand in hand together. I see a lot of good things across our district as well. Let me just throw this one out there. We have a school right now that the BSI is coming in and working with. And so they're making sure that teachers are using grade level resources and, and then they're using our district materials to test students on. But if you go back to like the relationship piece that you were just talking about, or even the high expectation piece, a lot of the times it's, the teachers are doing it, but they're not really believing that their kids can do it, right? So it's kind of like, I check the box off, going through the motions of giving my students this grade level instruction, these grade level resources, but I don't believe that they can actually do it. So that's where I see that we need to change as our district with those students, with those schools and those students that are struggling. It comes down to those high expectations and the belief that their students can achieve.
That's a good point. Thank you for sharing that. And belief plays such a huge part in so many things, right? Like if you're just doing it to check a box, but you don't really believe that they're going to be able to do it, it may limit, and you may not even see it, right? Like it may limit the extent that you're even going to go to provide additional supports or whatever it may be. So that's a good point. Susanna said there is watered down curriculum instead of rich tasks because they don't believe students can do it. Yes, and I've heard those conversations, especially as a math coach, engaging with a wide range of different teachers, is that let's just give them y equals mx plus b and ask them to find the slope or ask them to find the y-intercept. But we're not providing rich context because we like, oh, they can't read or they can't do this, they can't do that. And so that's a good point, Alicia and Susanna. And then Shelley said, teachers need to think about using strategies like cooperative learning. Y'all just presenting the PowerPoint for me. So teachers need to think about using strategies like cooperative learning to attack the hard questions so that everyone is a part of the process and everyone gets exposed to the hard math, right? And we need to stop looking at students with a deficit lens, definitely. And with those hard tasks like that, I feel like that is when we use those, that's the best opportunity to encourage students to have a growth mindset, because you can highlight the things that they're getting in the task and really like push for that and say, look, you got this part, we just need to work on this part, right? And so all of those are really good things. Okay, so thank you all for sharing. And so I'm going to now talk about some different strategies, which some of you have already mentioned in the chat, about ways to promote equity in the classroom. And the first is using discourse practices to promote equity in the classroom. So that goes back to what I think Shelley just said about using cooperative structures to be able to attack those hard questions, right? So some of the discourse strategies include rough draft talk, where so there's not a whole lot of, with a rough draft, that's not the final draft. You have room for errors, you have room for mistakes, and you can just kind of talk about it, right? And then when you want to get them to discuss mathematically, I love the idea of having sentence starters, because this may be the first time that students ever really engaged in this course in the math classroom. Like, they may have only been given worksheets, throughout high school or throughout whatever. And so having those opportunities for that, engaging in error analysis, right? That's a way to highlight that it's okay to make mistakes, and we also learn from the errors that we make. Math debates, noticing and wondering, jigsawing activities, think, peer, share, Socratic seminars, and then just some other strategies where you have a low floor but high ceiling, right? So if it's going to be a super engaging task, a super challenging task, you may say, okay, just identify the math in the problem. What math do we see? Right? Not asking them to answer anything, but just doing that. Underline the words that you feel like are communicating mathematically, and then building up to really answering the math in the question. And then conducting mathematical interviews using relevant and realistic tasks, all things that we've talked about. And then this other idea I recently learned about. I've seen teachers do it, but I've just seen it. This is my first time really seeing it in the literature. Before we go there, though, 3 read strategies. 3 read. I've never heard of that. Could you talk about what that is, Alicia?
Yeah, so that's where, students are seeing a word problem, and it's actually a reading comprehension strategy, but we use it for the math classroom instead of like pulling the keywords and whatnot, because then students just become number pluckers, right? So they read it the first time and talk about what they're visualizing, like what is the problem about. And so like if you're talking about, like a party or something, it's not really about like add, subtract, but more about what they're visualizing. That's why it's a reading comprehension strategy. The second time it's read, it's what is the question asking? And then the third time you read it, now your focus is on what information is important to help me solve this. So it really is great for all students, especially your ESOL students as well.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to have to add that to my list. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Yep. I love it. Love it. Love it. All right. So then this idea of using divergent formative assessment. So that's another way to promote equity in the classroom. So convergent formative assessment is defined as accepting or eliciting knowledge that strictly aligns with the teacher's expectations, right? Which may create inequities in the classroom by pushing students' nuanced strategies to the background. Whereas divergent forms of formative assessment welcome disagreement, confusion, and mistakes as a part of the learning process, right? So that all goes back to allowing for mistakes. Now, with this, I don't know, I just lost my train of thought. Divergent forms of assessment, welcoming agreement. Oh, I'll remember. So I went through a BEST training over the summer, and one of the things that stood out to me is that they included something in the BEST documents, right? The benchmark for the new standards we came out with. And they switched from the standard algorithm to a standard algorithm, right? And that allows for students to choose the way that they want to learn the math or they want to answer the question, right? Because oftentimes we may have a set student on, well, you didn't move this up, like you got the right answer, but you didn't use the strategy I wanted you to use. And so we penalize students for that. But by doing that, we're limiting the ways that students learn math, and we're not acknowledging the fact that you can get to an answer in many different ways, right? And so this type of assessment really encourages learning, right? Like even how Alicia just said, 3 read strategies. Well, if I'm a teacher and I'm like, oh, we're not talking about that, I just want you to think about these, that I don't learn nothing, I don't learn anything new either, right? And I'm limiting what my other students are being exposed to. And so this is very, very important. Susanna said also honor students' methods. Yes, from other countries. My husband is from Nigeria, and they learn math in different ways than we do, but then they arrive at the same answer. Sometimes when I'm at home and I'm working questions out the night before, I'll ask my husband to do it because I know he's going to do it a different way, right? And that exposes me as a teacher to know that, oh, my students might do it this way. Right. And so it's just a way to honor students. Yep. Opens more doors for discussion when we accept alternative answers. Good. And then earlier, Susanna said, also numberless word problems. What is the problem? Asking, we would never ask students to just pick out words in a reading passage. Yes, yes, I love that, Susanna. I've seen somebody do that before, and I thought that was awesome. I've even seen it where like the numbers are there, but they like block it out. And then after the students read it, then they show it again with the numbers, just as a way to take off pressure for students. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Yep. Promotes diversity and acceptance of perspectives. Yes. And so you all have, I was going to ask that you just started saying, and I was going to say, what are some of the benefits of divergent assessment? And so some of the ones here mentioned in the article I got this from is that student feedback is exploratory and promotes further engagement. Errors are seen as windows to see into students' mathematical thinking, right? Like that's where we get those misconceptions that we may have not seen before. Questioning techniques and discussion is employed, right? Problem solving interviews, students' voices are honored, and then students learn to communicate the diverse ways that they learn, use, and know mathematics, especially when they get to learn from others. So good, good, good. And then now we're going to switch to talking about digital equity. And this has really become especially important as when the pandemic happened, right? Like it really became important. And so what digital equity is so a simple definition of digital equity can be a state in which both the digital divide and the participation gap are bridged. So in other words, digital equity is the social justice goal of ensuring that everyone in our society has equal access to technology tools, computers, and the internet. Even more, it is when all individuals have the knowledge and skills to access and use technology tools, computers, and the internet. And so attending to the digital divide in Florida, there was a study done and it examined the digital divide in K-12 public schools, right? So there was a 4-year study and the results showed statistically significant differences between high and low socioeconomic schools at every level in terms of student access to software, use of software, teacher use of software, and the level of technology support. And so they found evidence that there was a digital divide in Florida. And then we know that this divide was amplified when COVID happened. And so I'm wondering what your experiences have been when it comes to technology in your own context, whether that be before the pandemic or even now during the pandemic. What has your experiences been with that?
So I'll talk. So I personally have always been trying to, be reflective on technology because I want to make sure that I'm just not using it to like substitute for what I would normally do, but use it to enhance learning. So, as my role in the district is the math coach, when we had COVID happen, I knew that there was going to be a bunch of teachers out there that aren't comfortable with strategies for helping their students. So I started exploring things like Flipgrid and Nearpod and helping teachers with that. But I think again, it's comes down to the teacher of if they want to do it versus what's best for their students.
Yes, that's a good point. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, about teachers wanting to do it or not. I've seen, especially during the pandemic, where teachers just refused to engage in any kind of online learning, even the ones that were being paid extra for it. They're like, I'm just going to post a worksheet online, and that's going to be my technology. But like you said, are we enhancing the learning, or are we just duplicating the learning? Because if we're just posting a worksheet, I mean, yeah, you're using technology because you're uploading it, but that's not really transformative, right? Like, students are not using a transformative test would be like students using Desmos to see a graph that they wouldn't be able to graph on paper and pencil, right? And so I love that point about, enhancing learning. We have someone who said that Pinellas is moving to one-to-one technology, their computers to check out up to 10th grade. Many teachers were happy to go back to paper and pencil. Again, my kids cannot do this coming out. Yeah. So we're all seeing similar issues. I was surprised when they were able to provide all of the students with laptops. It's like teachers have been asking for this for years, and it took a pandemic for this to happen, right? Like, really? So thank you all for sharing that. And then my next question is, how can educators ensure that technology-rich learning experiences aren't restricted to the most privileged students? Because that's really what the study showed, right? Like, that digital divide, it was more of the privileged students that were receiving access to technology, and not only just access to that technology, but also where teachers were actually using it in the classroom, right? Because, as much as we want every student to have a device, that just may not be the case. But if teachers are at least modeling that for students, that gives them some exposure. And so how do you think educators, whether that be teachers, district leaders, superintendents, how can we make sure that those learning experiences are not just restricted to privileged students?
I think one of the things is proper training, professional development for our teachers, because, I was, this question just made me think, are gifted students, hold on one second, I'm sorry. Are gifted students, and that's another whole discussion, right?
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about our classrooms that use technology the most before this pandemic happened. And a lot of it was in our accelerated gifted classrooms, because those teachers, would make sure that they're using things like OneNote or Teams with their students. And so when COVID happened, those students were already comfortable with it. But then, the other classrooms didn't have all of that. So I think it starts with professional development, but having a purpose, and for the teachers to understand why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Talk about amplifying that digital divide, right? Like, if the gifted students already are familiar with it, it's not a hard transition for them. But then with our lower students, that's making it even worse, because now they not only have to learn the new math, but also the technology that goes along with it. So good point. And then Shelley said, as a trainer of teachers, I heard a lot who were afraid we were being replaced. I've heard that so much too, Shelley. I'm going back to further my education right now. And I remember being told, like, you're wasting your money. We're going to be replaced by teachers. They're going to by computers. And that hurt my feelings too, because it's like, the technology is still out there. We can use it. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we know what we can do now as teachers. And I feel like sometimes as teachers, we focus on things that we can't control instead of focusing on what's in our control. And so even with this question, I realized that we as teachers can't go and buy a laptop for every student, right? But we can try to do what's in our means to make some kind of impact. Susanna said, many want technology to be used as a babysitter and data generator. Yes, right. Like playing a video in the class on a topic that you can teach and make more engaging. So we keep creating digital activities that are fun and engaging. Yes, yes, yes. All right. And so you all mentioned a way that we can ensure that these experiences aren't limited to teachers, and mentioned professional development. So that's exactly where I was going in the presentations, right? In the presentation, many teachers were educated during a time when technology just wasn't important. And so sometimes when teachers make those comments, it may just be because they didn't go through school when technology was required. Like when I came out of my teacher preparation program, almost in every class, there was some kind of technology related assignment required. Whereas with them, like some of them may have not even had computers, right? During that time, it was like the calculator was a big idea, right? When they came out. I remember my math teacher, she was probably like 70, and she just loved the idea of using, you know, those big TI-84 calculators. And I thought they were awesome too. But we've progressed so much more than that now. And so I believe that we as teachers should advocate for more professional development, which I know we hate sometimes, but if it could be mathematically meaningful for math teachers, then I think it could really make a difference. And so this TPAC framework just talks a little bit about what we need, right? So the T stands for technological pedagogical content knowledge. Then we have technological pedagogical knowledge, tech content knowledge. We have pedagogical knowledge, content knowledge, and then again, pedagogical knowledge. And so in short, I believe that most teachers who come out of teacher preparation programs, they have the content. They may struggle a little bit, right? Like sometimes I still have to go back and relearn some stuff that I haven't taught in a while, right? So we have the content knowledge. We even have strategies to be able to teach that knowledge, but we need to, we not only need technology knowledge, but we need mathematical technology knowledge, right? Like not just uploading a worksheet or not just playing a video, but what math applications, what math software can be used, like Alicia said, to enhance the learning, not just to duplicate it. And so I believe this is one of the things that we need to advocate for. And COVID has just revealed that even more. And so finally, as I get ready to conclude, the FCTM's Access and Equity Committee, for which I am the chair for, we are coming out with some things. And, you know, as we're discussing this technology piece, I believe that's going to be a part of it, like some professional development. So let me just start from Policy and Legislation Subcommittee, right? Because there was so much to do, we pretty much broke it up into 4 different subcommittees. So we have the Policy and Legislation Subcommittee, then we have the Programs and Professional Development, we have K-5 Curriculum, Instruction and Research, and then 612. So with the Policy and Legislation Subcommittee, the focus there is really, what can we do in Tallahassee? What can we do to make a difference in education policy at the state level, at the local level, at the district level, at the school level? And then we have programs and professional development, sort of like what we're doing now. We got this 3-hour program going on, and we want to make sure that we are talking about access to equity in mathematics education. Now, the K-5 and 612 curriculum, instruction, and research really focuses on what tangible resources can teachers use, right? Like what training or what information can we provide so that there is a list of, you know, transformative mathematical technology resources versus just duplication resources. So we want to produce tangible things that teachers can use in the classroom. And so if you're interested, next year, you know, the form is going to come out for new people who want to be a part of these committees and contribute, like all of the ways that you've contributed today. And so just keep that in mind as you begin to hear more and more about that in the coming conferences. And so finally, remember I told you it was going to be a mini quiz. I'm going to put this in the chat again, and I just want you to take a couple minutes to respond to that. just letting me know, maybe something you learned or some feedback that you may want to give. And that really concludes the presentation. So I just want to thank you all for engaging, for being a part of it, for sharing your ideas. I've learned from you all, and I hope you've been able to learn at least one thing here today. So thank you all so much. Definitely, I wanted to join this year. Yes, but it's a busy time. I understand. I completely understand. It's been crazy. I thought that things were going to get much better at school. Not that they're terrible, but it's just taking some time to really, like COVID is still affecting us. Let me just say that. So it's made things a lot worse. We have a lot of subs, that need to be filled in. And so, but we can always have you next year, Susanna.
Queshonda, that was a highly engaging and informative session. Great insights that you shared today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great rest of y'all day.
Thank you for joining, everyone. Enjoy your next session. Queshonda, if you would stay just for a minute.
Okay.
So, would you mind going back to one of your slides? I just need to take a screenshot so I can give a shout out.
Oh, okay.
So okay. Go back to the slides. I'll tell you which one.
Oh, okay. Let me know when to stop.
Yes. Because I have you side by side with you as well. So.
Okay.
Oh, maybe this one. Yeah. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah. Probably.
Okay.
Well, what does your title slide say?
Let's see.
Let's keep this in mind, and then the other one too.
Go back to the beginning. That's my title slide.
Okay, let's take this and I'll take a picture of the other one too.
Okay.
Okay, stay like that. I got you. Hang on one more time. Okay. So one on my desktop. Okay. And go back to the other one. Make it big.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Hang on. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm going